Hello world and welcome to Blood Magic in 1.16. Now in this version of 1.16 the mod is still in alpha, but everything in this episode of the tutorial will be also in version 1.12 as well. Things will later be implemented into the game. So this tutorial today is going to be a bit of a mid-game tutorial. Last time we went through all this stuff, how to start blood magic and everything. But today we're going to move on a little bit further into tier 3 and 4 blood altars, as well as moving on with our wills a little bit more. But before we get started, I'd like to say that if this tutorial helps you in any way, shape or form, please could you give me a like and subscribe, it really helps me out. And to stay in touch with tutorials later to come out. Anyway, let's get started. Now the first thing I want to actually show is the alchemy table. We're not going to cover this in very much depth, but I wanted to put this in the previous video, but it already got to 40 minutes long, so I thought we'd put it in this one instead. So basically this is at the tier 2 level, but it can be done in, actually no, it has to be done at the tier 2 level because you need the apprentice blood orb here. And essentially what we're going to do, the main goal here, is that you can duplicate your ores. So to duplicate your ores, you first need the cutting fluid. That's basically what the ultimate goal here. But before we get the cutting fluid, we need two things: plant oil and coal sand. Now, coal sand is done with 2 coal and a flint with the apprentice blood orb. And all you do is literally put the blood on here, put your ingredients in these squares here, and then it will craft the item in the center. Now this isn't working because I haven't claimed this orb as mine. But now you see it says currently owned by me, and that will start the craft. And this will give us actually 4 cold sand. So it's also a way of duplicating your coal as well. Since if you have other mods, you can actually put this back into regular coal. See, with mechanism, you could put it into the enrichment chamber and then turn each sand into coal. So you could pretty much infinitely double your coal here. But besides that, moving on. Now we've got the coal sand. Next is the plant oil. Now plant oil is done in a few different ways. We are going to be doing it with wheat. Essentially it's going to be any vegetable type material and bone meal. So if we just get a bit of plant oil here, and I'll actually show you the recipes. You see it's like 3 carrots, 2 potatoes, 3 beets and 2 wheat. So those are all the options. And it's the exact same in here as previous, except I've lost my apprentice orb. Slap that in there, it will do the craft and give you the plant oil, which is perfect. Now, the last thing is obviously once you have your sand and your plant oil, you'll need sugar, gunpowder, redstone, and a water bottle inside here. It will fill up all the slots in total. Put this in here and it will do the last craft, and it will give you the basic cutting fluid. Now, the cutting fluid is a little bit special, as it has got a durability. So it's not just a one-use thing, but as you can see here, it has 64 uses in total. So if we go around here, I ran out of space the other side, with the basic cutting fluid, you can put that in any slot, and then you'll have your ore inside here. So I don't know, let's test this out. If we put this in multiple spots, I don't know if it can do them all at once. No, it can't. So you have to do it in one slot at a time. But as you can see, it will go up and it'll give you 2 iron sand. And this iron sand can very simply just be put straight into a furnace, and then you'll get your iron ingots. And that's basically where I want to leave it this. So that's pretty much the tier 2 level. Besides that, we're going to actually move on now. So once you've finished your tier 2 altar and you've maybe done some of this duplication of things, you can move on to the tier 3 altar. Now the tier 3 altar will require you to either go to the nether to get glowstone on the top of these pillars, or you'll need enough prismarine in order to make these as sea lanterns, because you can have either or. And these stone bricks, they don't have to be stone bricks. It basically in the book says that it can be any block that isn't an air block. So if you put anything here, you can use cobblestone or whatever, and it will turn this eventually into a tier 3. So at the moment we have blank runes down here. You could probably put some other runes over here. So if you wanted to say use more of the self-sacrifice or the sacrifice runes to build the next tier, you could. it all helps in the end. But as you can see, we've got tier 3 altar, still with only 10,000 life points. Now, what we want to do here, let me just fill this up and use this sacrificial life. The next thing we need to actually make, in order to upgrade things further, is we're going to need our new version of Slate and our new version of Blood Orb. So, for the imbued Slate, you're going to need to make a reinforced Slate, which, as we know, is literally 1 stone. If it lets me actually give me something. We'll have 1 stone on here, this will turn into the blank slate, then the reinforced slate, and then finally the imbued slate. So this is going to take a little bit of time. As you can see, it's ticking down there slowly. But we'll just get 1 here for now. And then the other is the Magician's Blood Orb, and this requires a block of gold. But as you can see here, it costs 25k life points, and this only holds 10k. And there's no way at this level you can actually upgrade it until you have the Magician's Blood Orb. So you're going to have to stay here, and if you're in survival, which you most likely will be, you're going to either have to do the sacrificial method, which we showed previous episode, or you can have regeneration potions, smash potions, or drinking potions, and throw them on the ground so you keep regenerating hearts. That way you can constantly right click and self-sacrifice to keep this at 25,000. But eventually, once you get them, you'll get your brand new Blood Orb. Now this Blood Orb acts the exact same way as the Apprentice Blood Orb, as well as the Weak, and you before had 25,000 life essence or current essence with the Apprentice Blood Orb. So I think I have a little bit, oh no, I have a little bit under, but now if I right click this to the max, and let's see what the new maximum essence we will have available to us. So I've finally made it, and now the Magician's Blood Orb can hold up to 150,000 life points, which is a hell of an increase from the 25,000 with the Apprentice Blood Orb. So if you were to use sigils now, you would really be able to do some damage with what is available in the pack. But from here, we can now go one of 2 ways. We can either continue on into the tier 4 sort of stuff, or we can expand further with the will side of things and more of the tools that are available in this pack. So for this, we are going to start with going on with all the willed based stuff, and if you want to skip ahead, I'll leave a timestamp here to when we continue on to trying to get to tier 4. However, I will say that some things are required from here in order to get into the tier 4 stage now. So first thing, we can now upgrade our lesser gem at this point, now that we can get imbued slates. So again, inside of the good old Hellfire Forge, we'll need a diamond, an imbued slate, another block of gold, and the lesser Tartaric gem. Now we are of course going to need a second lesser Tartaric gem to actually make the craft itself, and this is going to use a little bit of the amount. It's going to use, there you go, 50 will in order to create a common Tartaric gem. Now this Tartaric gem is a lot better as it holds 1024 will in total, which is a rather big increase from the 256 that the lesser gem holds. And now we have a better gem, we can actually make some of the later items as well. But before that, we can also create this Demon Crucible. Now, the reason that we had to use a common Tartaric gem to make this Demon Crucible is because the amount of will that it takes is actually bigger than the full size of that lesser Tartaric gem. So, if we get a clean gem here, all it needs is a cauldron, stone, lapis, and a diamond, and this will give us the Demon Crucible. And then as well as that, we also need a second thing as well. So if I just pick up one of these, we're also going to need to get the Demon Crystallizer. And I will show you why here. Oh, I should probably leave that away. So with the Demon Crystallizer, that is going to be another Hellfire Forge, so you're going to have to make a second one of those. Stone, lapis, and this time glass instead of a diamond. So we'll slap that in there, and this will give us the Demon Crystallizer. So let me take this here. So the way the Demon Crystallizer works, although first let's start with the Crucible. We slap the Crucible down, and what we do is we put a Tartaric gem inside. And what this will do is it's going to start releasing all the wills that are within the Tartaric gem into the atmosphere. Now I'd recommend doing this all within the same chunk, as it would probably work a little bit better, but I haven't tested it out extensively, so I don't know if that's necessarily needed. And then the demon crystallizer, what that essentially is going to do is take the wills that are in the atmosphere and start crystallizing it into the center here. Now, the first crystal takes about 100 will in order to create. But something that this crystal can actually do is create branches or stalks off the sides of the main crystal chunk in the center. And each of these branches or spires, whatever you want to call them, they only cost 40 will in total to actually create. So this very soon is actually going to pop up with just 1 will, but I've already prepped over here. As you can see, we've got this one here. So the very middle chunk is the main 100, and then we've got these series of spires around the outside. And if you right click on this with a bare hand, it should give you what you need, and apparently it's not doing that, and I also just broke it. Well, that's not what I wanted. But over here you can see that the spire is now this spire has now been created. So I just wanted to check that what I said was actually right. As you can see here, the largest crystal cluster can be up to 7 spires. Then it says if you have at least 1,000 total will in your inventory across multiple Tartaric gems, you can harvest these crystals by right-clicking the spire with an empty hand. This will remove all but the central spire. So that is how it works, but for some reason it didn't work with me. I guess I just didn't have the 1,000 Tartaric wills in my inventory, which is unfortunate, and that does seem to be the case. But now what happens is this is going to take a bit of time to actually continuously make those spires. It's a shame that I actually got that wrong, but as you can see, this one's very, very drained. Now when I first put it in, it was at 1024, it was full. I've just left this in here and it will start doing the spires. But anyway, what you get from this is demon crystals. Unfortunately, I can't show this. Oh, something else, if I actually go into creative mode, so let's get one of these very quickly here, because we're going to make one of these as well. If I go into game mode survival, here, with the middle spire, if you do want to break it with a pickaxe, it will give you one of these crystals here, so that's just how that works, but obviously that is very expensive, so it's better if you actually do the spire right-clicking technique, but as long as you have 1,000 will in your inventory. And another thing, with the spires, when you'll get these crystals, you can then burn these crystals back inside the demon crucible, and that is for 50. So you have if you automated this, you would have a net gain of demon crystals, which will give you infinite resources to actually repair your tools. And then we spoke about previously in the previous episode over there how to make the Sentient sword, and at this point, when you reach this stage, your Sentient sword's probably very, very nearly broken. Now I haven't actually got a damaged one here, unfortunately, but all it is inside the lovely, what's this thing called, anvil here. You can put the Sentient sword and the demon wheels, and it will repair for you exactly the same as if you had a diamond pickaxe with some diamonds, or iron with iron pickaxes. And that's basically how that works. But from here, now that we have a way of actually repairing the Sentient sword, it's now worth making the other Sentient tools as well. So it's the exact same way as with the Sentient sword over the other side, except this time it requires the equivalent iron tool. So they all require a petty Tartaric gem, but then we need obviously a pickaxe, a shovel, an axe, and a hoe. Now these all act in the exact same way as the more will you have in your inventory spread across however many Tartaric gems, the better that tool will be. So with the pickaxe and the shovel, you'll actually be able to mine quicker, and then with the axe, I believe it chops down logs faster, as well as I think it gives you a little bit more damage as well, as it's usually used as a weapon. And the hoe is obviously used as a hoe, but with the scythe is actually used as a weapon as well, surprisingly, and it's used as a little bit more of an AoE type of thing, as it's got a big slash on it, similar to how the sword works. It will be less damage, but it's got a wider range of hit. And then that goes for tools, but you also have armor. Now, in Blood Magic 1.16, you only have this living armor, but in 1.12, you'll have living armor and sentient armor. So we won't be covering sentient armor today, just the living armor, but how to make it is you first need binding reagent. Now, binding reagent is done very easily inside the Hellfire Forge, and you will need 4 of them. It's just made with glowstone, redstone, gunpowder, and 1 golden nugget per binding reagent. And then to actually craft the living armor pieces, you've got to do that inside the arcane ash. So you're going to have to put, with your arcane ash on the floor here, you're going to need to get 1 binding reagent, slap that down. It'll create this crafting recipe. Then you take your equivalent iron armor, it has to be iron, slap that down, and it will give you this very, very cool animation. And it will, I don't believe this actually hurts you in any way, this lightning as well. And this will just give you a cool animation, and eventually will give you a helmet. Now I'm going to go back into creative mode here, just so I can start spawning things in again. So the way that these all work now is that they can learn what you are doing, if that makes sense. So the more you do one thing, the better upgrades it will have. So if you continuously wear this, you'll get a series of different upgrades. So if you took full damage, you'll get a resistance to full damage over time. If you eat some food and heal up your hearts, you'll actually end up gaining extra hearts on your hotbar, which we saw previous episode, how I was gaining hearts over time. Or even if we're just walking around, we'll eventually get speed upgrades. Now, let's actually go into the book with this one. So let's take this off, and I cannot look into it like that. So let's cover what you can actually get with the living armor here. So all the different upgrades, there's many different types, and they all have maximum levels. Here you can see that you got grants knockback, you can get increased damage and knockback while sprinting, mining speed, more experience, resistance to fire, additional hearts, as I said. See, up to 50 hearts in total you can get. Protection against arrows, cures from poisons, or wither, I think that as well. But anyway, you get loads of different things. Now, it says in the book here that doing everything at once makes things very difficult and gives you poor benefits. So it's actually better to have maybe a couple of sets of this. And obviously it's very cheap to make, since it's only redstone at the maximum, or glowstone, and it's iron tiered stuff. And you might want to have one dedicated to mining, so obviously the more you mine, the faster it will be, and if you're walking around you'll get speed. Maybe you want a fighting one, so as you're fighting you can level up those sort of things quicker. Or maybe you want an exploration one as well, so say you're taking a lot of full damage, you're getting hungry a lot, or a mix of the fighting and the mining as well. It's better if you specialize, essentially. That'll make things quicker to level up as you're focusing on one thing. But this is nearly where we're going to pretty much leave the will side of things now. So that's all the tools. That goes for the basic actual mining tools anyway, and the armors. But there's a couple of other gizmos I'd like to show here. So, first one is the shaped charge. It's made with cobblestone, charcoal, has to be charcoal, sand, and regular stone. And this will actually give you 8 at a time, I believe. And how these charges work, it's a little bit like TNT, except that it's a lot better. So you get 8 at a time. And the way that this works is that if I just put down, let's say 2 layers here, what's going to happen is that this charge will actually neatly take out a 5x5 chunk and drop all the items as well. So it's a very efficient way of mining instead of using up all of your mining tools. So if I slap this somewhere in the center here, if I just put this here, and then it starts lighting by itself. If I just leave that to go, it should blow everything up. Okay, it hasn't done stone. That's very strange. It definitely should have done stone. Ah, I see. Okay, so there's something I've just learned about these charges. They only blow up one underneath them. That's what it is. It blows up underneath them. So if I place this back, you'll see here that if I put this in the center here, it will only do what's underneath it. So when you're mining, you don't actually have to dig a little bit forward. There you go. That completely destroys all of that. Right, here we go. We've got a brand new 5x5 chunk here. Let's actually try it straight from the center. It'll blow itself up and it should take up this whole chunk perfectly. There you go, an even 5x5. Now, these charges also have a counterpart. These are called the Deforester charges. Now, you can probably guess what these actually do. This also requires charcoal and cobblestone, but this time a log and a plank. And the way these work is it's very, very similar to the charges, except it works solely on logs. So if you place this on logs or leaves, it will actually take up to 128 logs. So if you had a tree farm where many leaves were all very, very close together, it will actually blow them all up at once. So here we have, I've just quickly grown up a large amount of trees. There's definitely more than 128 blocks here, I'm sure. But let's place this on the edge and see what it does. It should light itself just like the other. There we go, it nearly took away all of it at once. And I believe this actually can work horizontally as well. So if I had a big square, it would take up to 128. This was just a quick demonstration to show how far it can actually take up. And it drops all the items as well, so you'll get saplings from however many leaves were broken. Obviously all the trees were very close together, so there are less leaves here, but as well as apples you also get. We got 1 apple out of that, which is actually a little bit disappointing in my opinion. So from here, I'm actually going to leave the wills behind and let's get back into the blood magic. So obviously we've got the tier 3 altar now, which means we have brand new runes that can be used to actually increase this ability of the blood altar at this tier. So if we go around the back here, let's introduce you to 3 new runes. Now, the first one I actually want to show is the speed rune. You can actually get this from the tier altar 1, and it's one that I missed off previous episode. But what it does is it essentially does a 20% speed to all your crafts. So it just requires the 2 blank slates, the blank rune, some sugar and stone. That is literally it, and you'll get 1 speed rune. So if it takes, say, maybe a minute to actually craft something, this will reduce that by 20% essentially. But the other ones, which actually do require these imbued slates, you'll first have the displacement rune. Now the displacement rune is crafted with, again, 4 stone and the blank rune, as well as this time using an imbued slate and 3 water buckets. Now, this displacement rune, what it does is increases the flow rate of blood in and out of the altar. So remember how last video we showed how there's an internal buffer for the blood altar, and with any sort of mod that we used mechanism, any mod that has pipes, you can take blood in and out. This essentially increases that flow rate. Very, very simple stuff, and obviously the more you add, the quicker that flow be. The other is finally the runes of capacity, and as they say, they will increase the size of your blood altar, again using 4 stone, this time 3 empty buckets, a blank rune and an imbued slate. That is all it takes to create this capacity, but it increases it only by 20%. It adds 20%, so per 1 you'll probably get about 200-ish per. So let's actually take this round to give it a quick test. So at the moment we're at 10,000, as you can see. If we switch this out here, it should turns up to, there you go, 12,000. Of course that's 20%. So you get 2,000 extra per rune that you add. So if you end up switching all of these round, which is rather cheap, it just takes up all the buckets, you can make this quite large. And any other crafts in the future that actually require more, as you had to struggle with the 25k limit with the only 10k in the altar, now this is going to increase all the way up to 50,000, which is actually not as much as I thought it would be, but 40,000 more than before. That's a heck of a lot better. Now from here we have to pretty much find a way to get into the tier 4 altars. But in order to get to the tier 4 altars, you're going to need an item, and this item is the weak blood shard. Now the weak blood shard is used for 2 things. One is the master orb, as well as actually making these bloodstone bricks, which are required in the build of the tier 4 altar. But how do you get weak blood orbs? You're going to need a machine. Now this is pretty much one of the very few machines that are actually in blood magic, considering it's a magic mod, and that's the alchemy reaction chamber. It's created with 2 imbued slates and the magician's blood orb, which is why you had to have the tier 3 altar before you can get here. And then you also need the furnace, 2 iron blocks, and then the top being stone, and that will give you the alchemy reaction chamber, as you can see in here. Now as we showed at the beginning how you can duplicate your ores with the basic cutting fluid, you can now automate this using this alchemy reaction chamber. So if we took some of this ore here and then slapped it in here, it will just keep on going through. Now obviously this does have a durability, remember, so you're gonna have to replace it every now and then. Now I haven't tested it, but I believe if you pipe in through the left, you can put in your cutting fluid, and if you pipe in through the top, that will put in your ores, and then if you pipe out the side, that will give you your sand. But obviously what you can do here, just to make it even more simple, what you can have is just obviously hoppers, because if you had a hopper on top, you can see this can go up to 5 spaces here. So if you put 2.5 stacks in here, you would end up using all of this here. So it's very, very simple that way. So you could just leave it 2.5 stacks and you'll be golden. In fact, you could nearly do it from the same chest if you had a hopper on top, hopper on the side, and then finally, actually, you probably would have to pump it out this side here, though, unfortunately, because as I don't know, the hopper works if you went underneath. But that's essentially that. As well as being able to automate your duplication of ores, you can also use this as a smelter. Now, you can put one of 2 things in here, either the primitive fuel cell, which is made very, very simply, it's literally just coal, any sort of orb, I believe. Let's see. Okay, no, you need the magician's blood orb before you can do this, but it does only take a blank slate, and then cobble or any other type of, rubbish stone. And the way that this primitive fuel cell works is that it has 128 uses. You see, I've already used some here. So what you can do is you can take your sand from here that you've duplicated and then pipe it straight into here. So if you had 2 of these reactors, you could have it automatically duplicating and smelting, which is wonderful. As well as that, you'll have this other thing. Now this is a lava crystal. Now the lava crystal can actually be created much earlier than this primitive cell, and it's something that I could have covered in the previous episode. It requires just lava. As you can see, it uses the weak blood orb, and the way this works is essentially, I'll read it here, it's a never-ending fuel source, and it consumes 50 life points to burn for 10 seconds. Or long enough to cook an item. And what it means by your life points is in your orb. So before, if you only used the weak blood orb, it would have only been 5k, which isn't that much if you think about it for how many things you could burn. Plus, I believe you have to stay quite near. But if you had 150,000, that's obviously going to last a little bit longer. Another thing that the book says it can do is if you right click on the floor, it will actually ignite, costing 100 life points. But I haven't seemed to get that to work. Maybe if we do it on wood, that's just an idea that's came to me. Let's see, let's just do stripped oak logs. Nope, that's not working. Shift right clicking doesn't work. It's a feature that may not have been implemented, but hopefully that works in 1.12. I am yet to test it, but that's what the book says it can do, so I'm inclined to believe it, but I just haven't managed to make it to work, unfortunately. But the main reason that we actually wanted this alchemy reaction chamber was to obviously make this weak blood shard. Now, to make the weak blood shard, mumbling my words there, we're going to need this sanguine's reverter, similar to the name of a sanguine's sanctum here. So if we take one of these, and I'll show you how to make it, it has to be done in the Hellfire Forge, and it requires shears, stone, iron, imbued slate, and the common Tartaric gem, which is how I was saying you must have the Tartaric gem before you can actually continue to tier 4, and obviously before you can get the common, you have to do all the basic stuff we showed previous episode. So what this does is if you slap this in here, it goes in the same slot as either the lava crystal, the primitive cell, or the basic cutting fluid. And what you do is you put imbued slates in. Now when you put the imbued slate in, you will 100% get at least 1 blood shard, but there's also a 20% chance you could get a second from the 1 imbued slate. Now, something else that this sanguine reverter can also do is if I quickly go over here and get the other blood orbs, they can actually, as it says, revert these blood orbs back to what they used to be. So if we take the weak blood orb here, that should turn it back into a diamond, and then if we take the, where's it gone? I did not get the apprentice one. Let's get the apprentice one. There you go. If we put the apprentice blood orb in here, this will give us our block of redstone back. And there we go. And obviously that goes into the next slot as well. Now, this is essentially how far we're going to go with just this machine. We can cover this machine more at a later date, but this is what we are going to need to make the weak blood shard. And now it's on to tier 4. Now the tier 4 altar is again just another layer. Again, these stone bricks can just be any block that isn't an air block. And then finally, these bricks here, how you make these is very, very simple. It's first you have to make these large bloodstone bricks, which is literally any type of stone and a weak blood shard. This will give you 8. And then the same way of making stone bricks is just 4 of these large bloodstone bricks to make the shaped bricky type bloodstone brick, I don't know, whatever you call them. And those go at the top of these spires, similarly to the glowstone. Now again, we are going to be using blank rooms just to build this, and here we're going to just duplicate what we have over there with the tier 3 altar. Now, since we're at tier 4, again we have brand new slates and our final orb. Now, in 1.16, this is pretty much as far as you can go. Tier 4 is the end of blood magic at the moment, but obviously we're going to go over sigils at some point, and as well as rituals start opening up at tier 3 really. But those will be in a separate video, so like and subscribe to stay notified when these tutorials come out. I would love to see you there. But anyway, let's move on. The new slate, it's going to be the demonic slate. For that, you obviously need the imbued slate first, and this costs 15k life points in order to create, which is why it's very good to actually have these capacity runes on here. That way it will have the 50,000 required in here, so you never have to worry about it running out. As well as that, you're going to need a weak blood shard to create the master blood orb. Now this takes 40,000 life points, so another reason to keep the capacity up. Otherwise you would have to stay here and try and keep on top of it, make loads of regeneration potions, so you really want to get these capacities as soon as you can. But once those are created, we're not going to go too much into all the things that can be actually built with the Master Blood Orb today, but we're going to go and look at the last available runes that are actually in the pack. So if we go around the back here, we have 4 final runes. So we're going to go in order here. Firstly, we're going to have the Rune of Augmented Capacity. Now, this is very, very similar to the Rune of Capacity and actually requires a Rune of Capacity to create. However, do not replace your already attached capacity runes. Make new ones, and I'll tell you for why. So, this is crafted with obviously the Master Blood Orb and the Demonic Slates, 4 Obsidian, we're no longer using stone here, and 2 empty buckets. Now, as you can see, we get 1 augmented rune here, and you obviously always keep the Blood Orb. And what this does is, you can see it says multiply here, if I'm pronouncing that correct. So, the way this works, it gives you times 7.5% per rune to your capacity after the capacity runes have been acknowledged. So, I did this test over here. So we built this last episode. As you can see here, it's 100% made up of just augmented capacities. There's no other capacities actually on this thing. Now, bearing in mind this is a tier 5 altar right here, so there's a lot more runes, but the capacity here is 327,420, and that's just using these augments here. But because these multiply, if we just add 1 capacity rune here, it will remove, we're now going to have 406,997. That is a big increase. We had a second one, which is 20%, of course. Oh, there's a bat here. Hello. We had a second one, of course. It now turns to, if it updates, 49,000. We just got up 90,000 by just adding 1 more rune. Add another capacity, and that will change to 58,000. So it's essentially 90,000 per time. Now, you have to take into account we've got this extra layer of augmented runes, but as you can see, it's very well worth it that if we first have all these to be capacities and then add these. So if we just got the base 50,000, how many do you reckon we'll actually have after we've turned all of these into the augmented capacities? Right, so I've just added the last augmented capacity. So we've got, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. We've got 20 capacity runes, and then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. We've then got, was it 36? 36, I think that's right. No, that's completely wrong. 28 augmented runes. So it was 50,000 before, and we now have, wow, 586,714. This is why you don't want to remove these capacity runes, as that is more than the tier 5 just with the augmented capacities. So that's a big increase. As you can see, it's got very empty now. It will take a very long time to actually fill this up, but probably once it is filled up, you're going to be good for a very long time, for quite a lot of crafts. And that way you can probably automate making these slates a hell of a lot easier. But anyway, heading back round the outside here, the next rune is the Rune of the Orb. Now this actually can be created with, it has to have the Master Blood Orb in the center, but then any 2 other orbs. So these 2 could be the Magician's Blood Orb or the Apprentice's Blood Orb, but they can obviously be made with the Weak Blood Orb, so I assume that's why you would want to use that. Unless you don't want to use diamonds, otherwise the redstone recipe is probably going to be a bit cheaper. But then this requires stone again, and 2 blank runes this time, not just 1. And this will give us the Rune of the Orb. Now, as you can probably tell, it's got something to do with the orb. For each rune added to the blood altar, it will add 2% of the max orb capacity to the altar. So now that we have the Master Blood Orb, we actually haven't checked what the max essence is. So we're at 150,000 for the Magician's Blood Orb. If we delete this one here, let's delete this other one, and let's see how many you're actually going to be able to get with the Master Blood Orb. So I actually ended up having to look this up as it was taking so long. So what you can do is put the blood orb onto your blood altar, and what it will do is actually fill up your essence from the blood altar itself. That's what all these particles are here. Now I've looked up, the Master Blood Orb can actually hold 1 million life points or life essence in total. So what I've gone is I've gone over to the altar I made in the previous episode, and I've added a whole load more sacrificial runes here. That way we can fill this up a lot quicker. As you can see, I've nearly got it filled now. I mean, even right now I've now got this to 238,000, and I've been doing this for a little bit of time now. So you probably need to have some way of having an automatic killing system. I can think of a few ways you could do it, probably cyclic and stuff, but this is sort of a very late to or mid game to late game tier item here, especially since you have 1 million life points here. So using the lava crystal, if it actually works and you're standing nearby, just going AFK, making all your things duplicating and stuff, it's very effective. It will last a long time. Or if you have sigils, say you've got there's a sigil called the Sigil of Mining, which increases your speed. It will increase your speed for a very long time before you actually start taking damage and it starts using your health up again. So I'm going to keep going until this is filled up entirely, and then I'll meet you back over to the other side. So finally I've now got this to 1,000 life points. I had to go and put a couple of speed runes on there in order to increase the amount of blood that will go into this. But in theory now, if we manage to actually put one of these down, it will increase the side even further. Apparently that was just a complete lie. Maybe, hey, you have to put it on top for it to increase it. Okay, I see now. There you go. Now got 1,001,775. So I'm not going to bother with the 2% of a million, as to be honest, I don't actually know what that is right off the top of my head. But that's essentially how it works. In order to increase the speed, you would have to place it and actually use the blood method, not actually right clicking in the air. So in theory, what you could do is have 2 altars. You could have one altar with the max of the master, fill up entirely, and then have every rune be either capacity, augmented capacity, and then the runes, and that will give you a heck of a lot more than you bargained for. There you go, we're now up to 1,107,650, which is quite a bit more than the max of 1 million. So it's not bad. You can obviously increase this master, considering we're in 1.16 and the later orbs. There are actually 2 more orbs after this, but in 1.16 they aren't in there. The next one is actually the Arc Age orb, but we'll go into that when we go into 1.12 for the rest of the tutorial. Anyway, the last two runes we've got here, the Rune of Charging. Now, the Rune of Charging requires a blank rune, demonic slate, master blood orb, 2 glowstone and 4 redstone. And the Rune of Charging, what it's essentially going to do is the internal buffer that is on the blood altar, which we have looked at in the past, this will increase the size of that internal buffer and put more blood into it. Now, how this sort of works is that every 20 ticks in game, it will like do a check and take more blood into the altar. There is a limit, and the more charging runes you have, the bigger that internal buffer will be. And essentially what will happen is that when you go to do a craft, however much blood is inside the internal buffer first will actually be used straight away. So say you had enough of these charging runes on your altar, I don't know how many it would be, to have 50,000 internal buffer of the blood altar. Then what you could do is have the weak blood orb, slap that down, and it would convert it instantly because it would have used 40,000 of that 50,000 of the internal buffer. So it's almost like a secondary way of increasing the size of this even further, and it's technically quicker than using the speed runes, as it's instant depending on how much you have inside that internal buffer. And the last rune that we're going to look at today, and it's the final one in 1.16, is the Acceleration Rune, made with, again, the Master Blood Orb, Demonic Slate, and this time needing the Speed Rune, 4 buckets and 2 gold. And this is going to essentially, as this is said, it checks every like 20 ticks or so, this will remove 1 tick from the operation. So as well as that, we looked at the Displacement Rune over here, which increases the flow rate. That's obviously done on a tick rate as well. I don't have specific figures, but the same, it depends on the mod you have and obviously how powerful the pipes and stuff itself actually move stuff. But this rune, Displacement Rune, also works on a tick basis. So if you had some of the acceleration runes with the displacement runes, it will further increase the rate of flow with the life essence in and out of the altar, and then also increase the amount of blood taken into the internal buffer. And that there is actually all the runes for 1.16. Now, I'm not 100% certain if there are any more in 1.12. If there are, we'll obviously have a look at those. This is going to be the end of tier 4 here, and most likely in the next episode we're going to go a little bit more into the rituals, as this for 1.16 is actually the end. I'm going to do a little bit of research. There is a tier 5 altar in this, but nothing from tier 5 has actually been implemented into 1.16 yet. So the rest of these episodes are going to actually be done in 1.12, but all the sigils and rituals that are going to be in 1.16 I will cover in those episodes as well. So next time we're going to look at some late game things. We're going to look at tier 5, and also there is actually tier 6 as well, which was I think a request from a lot of people in the community, and it was eventually added more as a joke, as once you get to tier 6 things become so OP that the game becomes so easy that it's essentially boring. At least that's what I've read anyway. So that's what we're going to be doing next time. If this tutorial helped you in any way, shape or form, please leave a like and subscribe and ring that bell to stay notified of later tutorials to come with both blood magic and other mods as well. We're going to be looking at some others as well. We've had a couple of requests come from the community for mods that you would like me to cover next, but obviously we're going to finish blood magic first. And also guys, join the Discord. I'll leave a link down to that in the description. We are a growing community, and for the latest updates of all things, whether I'm tweeting or going live or even uploading a YouTube video, you can get all those notifications in one place when you join the Discord, so I'll leave a link down to that in the description. But anyway guys, thank you so much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Take care.